twin, and I think I was about 2.5 or 3. Funny I should remember it, but I do remember it, sitting in the middle of a table and cutting my sister's hair off. My mother was not very pleased.
No, your sister was very pleased either.
No.
I had a sister like that. She used to be like that.
She was 10 minutes older than me, so she thought she was the boss when we got older. But then my mother was quite poor health, so that's when we moved to Worthing in 1938, I think it was. Because when we first came, because when we lived in Worthing, there was lights everywhere. Because when we came to a place called Sompton, Hill Barn, and they were just building the first bungalows up there called Mickey Mouse Town.
Yeah.
Do you remember it? And ours was the only bungalow up there. So of course it was ever so dark, and we used to have to go up this hill to get to our bungalow. There was a farm on this side. Now I always remember the first night we moved down there, these frogs and things were running, and which frightened us to death, of course. So. But well, actually my father moved us to into Worthing because he was a postman at Worthing Post Office, and we lived in Hanway. And when they started dropping bombs on the railway, he thought, well, we'd move again. So we moved into a road called Congreve Road, and we lived there for 46 years.
Oh, a long time.
It was. I loved it. I didn't really want to move from there.
Do you remember any particular incidents from the war?
Oh, yes. I remember the bomb dropping in Haynes Road onto a house and killing a woman. I remember that. We used to have quite a few for us, and they used to fly over Worthing and drop what they'd got left after London and leave it with us, you know, the bombs and things. And then when the, what was those things called?
V1s, doom
yes.
bugs.
And of course we used to hold our breath when they were over the top of us. I started working in a warehouse, and I was there for a couple of years. Always wanted to do nursing, and my mother said, no, you don't wash floors for me, you're not going to... Oh, she had a funny idea about nursing. Anyway, she was taken ill, and we wanted someone there during the day, because my sister and my dad were there during the night time, and to look after her. So I went to Worthing Hospital to get a job, I thought, on the switchboard. And this was during the war, of course, and they said, no, but we're looking for nurses. And I said, well, I've just passed my exams in the Red Cross. So he said, just what we're looking for. So that was the start of my life. It was lovely. I was very fortunate in my first round on the district, having Ferring as my first round, because that was the village, wasn't it? And that was wonderful there. And a weekend you never bought any vegetables or anything, because they used to pile them up in your car and that. And but they were... everybody knew everybody, and the doctor used to say to me, what's going on in Ferring today, right? And the lady, and they lived in Onslow Drive, in Ferring, and she, I used to go to her, and I used to get there about 7 in the morning, give her a breakfast and everything, and she said when she died she wanted a sprig of rosemary on a cart and be wheeled round Ferring village when she died. And so they did it. Her son took her on the cart, wheeled around Ferring village.
In a cart?
On a cart. That's what she wanted.
How extraordinary.
Yeah. She was a lovely lady. Really lovely.
And one of my early memories was having a thing stuck on my ears by my grandfather, and hearing a funny noise and him saying, that's a wireless. Joy listening to. My husband, he wasn't born in Worthing, he was born in Somerset. But he lived in Worthing all the rest of his life apart from the war.
So how did you meet him then?
I met him in a church army canteen in a place called Radcliffe near Manchester. I was told they wanted people to help. He was to give the soldiers that lived locally, it was to give them a chance to... We used to play chess and all sorts of board games, and we used to give them drinks and make sandwiches and cups of tea. And I met him there. I was told that when he left and he was with the Church Army people, he asked about me. What was his name? What was my name?
What's her name?
And then he went home to his digs and he told his landlady's daughter-in-law that he'd just met the girl that he was going to marry.
Oh.
And she said, when are you taking her out? He said, I haven't asked him yet. She said, if you're going to marry, you'd better hurry up. And then he didn't see me a few weeks, so he got my address and he wrote me a letter asking me if I'd like to go out with him. I've still got that letter.
Oh.
Well, I haven't actually, my son's got them, but it still exists. I was the eldest of 5 children. I had 3 brothers, and my sister was the youngest. I'm the only one that's still living. The other, all of them, unfortunately, they've gone. I have 4 grandchildren, two of each, and I've got 8 great-grandchildren, the eldest of which was, next month he'll be 24.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I've handled a lot of children in my life. In fact, I think looking after children has been really the biggest part of my life. My husband, as I say, he lived in this farm, which is the other side of Titnall Road where you were. He went to work in Arundel. He was bank clerk. He was bank clerk most of his life. Actually, he had polio when he was in Somerset, and he always had one leg that was slightly thinner than the other, and he walked with a slight limp. He went in the army under conscription, and he was very disappointed because he'd already done, like you, he'd done Red Cross work and driven an ambulance, and he was a radio ham as well, if you know what that is.
Yes.
And so he was proficient in Morse, but they wouldn't have him there. He could also ride a motorbike, but they wouldn't have him in dispatch. He ended up in the Army Pay Corps for 6 months. But it took him 6.5 years before he got out.
Really?
And we came to Worthing in 1954, just after he'd been demobbed. Unfortunately, he'd had to have some surgery on his feet, which left him with rather high insteps. Of course, in the army, you wore boots, and my husband got a thing to say that he couldn't wear boots, he had to wear shoes, and he was only a sergeant, you see, so they shouldn't wear. Every time we travelled and you got on a railway station, the red caps used to think, that man's wearing shoes and he should be wearing boots. He had this thing that said, you know, he was entitled to wear just shoes, but he always had to present this pass to them, you see. It got very, very tatty in the end. When we came to Worthing, we had rooms in somebody's house to start with. We had a bedroom, a sitting room, use of bathroom and toilet and kitchen, but we were only there a few months. When, funnily enough, the girl that had taken his place in the bank had to stop her job, you see, because he'd come back from the war, and she knew of a flat that was going. We lived in the Steen, in a flat. It's now part of the Chatsworth Hotel.
That's nice.
And of course he went to work at the bank in Worthing. And we've lived in Worthing ever since.
And I was born in Valletta in Malta,
Oh.
George Cross Island. My father was in the Royal Navy, so he happened to be there at that time. And I stayed there, I think, about 18 months. And then we came back to England. And it can't be the first place we lived, but I remember the first place I can remember was right at the foot of the Forth Bridge in Scotland. And I remember there was an Italian ice cream place there that was very good. And I think one of my biggest memories of that place is when I was on a train and I was looking out of the window and the guard shut the door and took the top off my finger. And I remember being in a pushchair being rushed to the doctors. I've lived absolutely all over the place. I can't remember the majority of it.
So because your father being in the forces, moving around?
He was moving around and my mother obviously moved around wherever he was. So loads of places in England, Scotland, Ireland. I met my husband in Scotland. I was on a skating rink trying to skate, and I fell over and he picked me up.
Oh.
So that's how we met. Then when I married into the forces again, into the Air Force. So I lived in Cyprus for a couple of years and I lived in Ghana for a couple of years. I've never been anywhere for any length of time.
No.
I think probably Worthing is about the longest I've ever been anywhere.
And how long have you been here?
About 10 years now.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Going back to the war a little bit, I do remember in my grandparents' garden they had an air raid shelter. And I thought it was a horrible place. I hated being taken down there at night time, having to sort of sleep on this make-do bed thing. And I always felt it was more dangerous there in the garden than being in the house. I felt the house had got a bit of protection around me, whereas this heap of earth really didn't have very much at all. And I remember they had a very old car in the garage which stayed there the whole war, all covered up. And a billiard table too, which my cousin and I used to play with. Again, talking about sort of loos in the garden and newspaper and things like that, I remember that too. I remember my grandmother's mangle. When she was washing clothes, she had this wetchy great mangle. We had to turn the handle around to get the water out of things.
So did I.
Yeah.
And a big old copper that people had.
That's the thing, yeah, sort of stir it all around in it. Mm. Yes, and my grandmother had cataracts very badly. So I always remember her with very bad eyesight. And sort of as she got older, she lived to 101. And as she got older, she was very tiny, very slim, very short, but she could go like the clappers when she wanted to. And I used to have to trot down the road to keep up with her. I used to have to grab her by the collars when she decided she'd go across the road because she never looked to see if anything was coming.
I don't really remember Shepherd's Bush because my parents then moved when I was quite young to Barnes, and we lived there for some years. And what I remember about Barnes mainly is I had an older sister and two older brothers, and Barnes comes to me because of course the war came, didn't it? I remember just going to school, but when the war came, I remember I was one of those girls that, oh dear, war came and my uncle was there walking by my side, and I remember my uncle, he wrote my name and address and put a penny in my purse, and that was the last time I saw him.
Oh dear.
Because he was then in the forces and he was killed in Crete during the war.
Yes.
So that's how I remember him, really.
Yes.
But as I say, then of course the evacuation came, and I remember the morning we went to school, and we had to take our luggage, whatever we had with us. We had our name and address on us, and our gas masks. Oh, those horrible gas masks! We had to put them on, and of course we could smell all the rubber. But it seemed couldn't see because it was all blurry, I suppose, breath. Anyway, we had to carry these up with us. Anyway, I remember just being at the station with my mother. Well, first of all, we had to go to school. And we all met there, and all these children. So I was just 8 years old then. And I remember standing with my mother and talking to the mums and talking to the girls, and she said to some, well, we look after my little girl. And somebody else did, and somebody else did. So there was 5 of us little girls attached to one girl who must have been about 14, I think she must have been. Well, anyway, when it was time for us all to go, we were always put on these trains. I don't really remember saying goodbye to my mum. I remember being on the train and we were all waving goodbye. And I lost these girls that were supposed to look after me. But there was one girl, she was just a bit younger than me, and her name was Nancy Peel. And we lost the other two, so we just more or less kept together. And we went to a place called Lutterworth, which was near Rugby. And then we all got in different cars, and then we went to a hall. And I remember we all had to stand in line, and we were given a bag, and we were told to walk in line, and that we had to go down the line, and there was ladies behind tables and things to give us, they were putting food in them. And they said, now wherever you get billeted in, you must give this food to wherever the lady, wherever. And I kind of stuck with Nancy, and children were put in cars, and we were, and then dispersed to different homes, and then there was Nancy and I, and we were the last two. And somebody said, oh, they only want boys, they don't want girls. But anyway, we were riding up and down the road for a while. Anyway, we ended up somewhere, and her family did take us in, a man and a wife, and her mother lived with them. And she told us to call her Pip, and he was to be called Les, and the mother was Mrs. Shortland. And they were lovely to me.
Oh,
They were lovely to me.
oh, that's great.
But Nancy was an only child, and but we got on very well together. And then Nancy and I used to have to walk a mile to school every day, which we did. And I remember every Sunday Les used to take us for a walk up to a lane, Nobody's Lane, and Nancy and I used to play with coloured glass, and it was like we had a little grotto of fairies. It was so vivid. Oh, coming back. But I was quite happy with Pip and Les and Mrs. Shortland. Very good to me they were. And the first Christmas we evacuated, I'll never forget, because Father Christmas came to us, and Pip brought us a lovely night dress case, but it was a lion with all lovely green satin inside. It was lovely. Nancy and I had one each. That was from Pip. And Les bought us a panda, and Mrs. Shortland bought us a handbag each. Exactly the same, but Nancy's was blue and mine was brown. And that's so vivid to me. Then I remember my father came to see me once. He brought me a lovely Easter egg. I remember it. And I remember once that Nancy and I were out the front dancing, and we were dancing to Lily Lamar Lane, and then there was a man kept staring at us out the front, and Mrs. Shortland came out. She always had a tea towel in her hand. I always remember with that. And she said to this man, "What do you want? What do you want?" She was going on at him, and he said, "That's my granddaughter." So she said, "What do you mean that's your granddaughter?" He said, "That's Nancy, that's my granddaughter." So of course then she said to Nancy, "Is that your granddaughter?" And she said, "Yeah." And of course he came in, and I don't remember much more of that.
Oh, that's, yeah.
But the next thing is, you see, my parents came to take me away. I was with them for a year.